It's conceivable that they could find a facility and there's be a separate wing where he could be housed separate from other inmates, where the Secret Service could be there. I mean, again, that's the other part of it. The Secret Service their job is to protect him.
Let's talk about where Trump may be housed if he does go to prison. And obviously, this is knocking it along a fair bit, but we want to imagine what life would be like for Donald Trump. And I gather that FPC Pensacola, as it's known, could be the prison where he's held. Tell us what it's like and what that would mean.
Sure. Well, the prison in Pensacola is a minimum security camp. Certainly, it is a place where he might be held. There's a lot of things that are going to happen before he ends up going into any Bureau of Prisons prison, including Pensacola. I would assume
this is in Florida. We should point out as well,
right.
just so people can place it.
Pensacola is in Florida, and it is a minimum security prison. It is one of several that if he was to be incarcerated, would end up in. My guess is he would either be a low or minimum security inmate based on, there are a number of factors that are going to go into that, whether he's the length of his sentence, for example, other things like that would be considered in where to place him. If he was to go at a minimum security level, which is Pensacola, the goal would be to try and keep him as close to home as possible. And so Pensacola is one that has been written and published before in speculation because it's in Florida. And it is the only minimum security camp in Florida. So it's likely that if he was to be at that security level, he would be there. It's possible if he was at a low security prison, he could be in Miami or in Coleman, Florida, two other prisons in Florida. But like I said, there's a number of factors that go into this, including length of sentence or what programs he needs, or, he's not a young person, what medical conditions he may have. That will come into play if there is a particular prison that is better suited for to meet his medical needs. He might have to go somewhere else. So there's a number of factors that'll come into play.
Yeah, he can still be president from jail, can't he?
I guess theoretically he can. That's certainly not an area that I'm an expert in. And it'll be very challenging for him to do that. That's where it's going to be interesting, right?
Yeah, because I'm wondering if he would have a version of the Oval Office in there, if he would have a special wing. Does he just operate out of his prison cell and add on a few more? I mean, these are kind of crazy things to think about, but has there ever been an equivalent? I don't know.
I'm sorry. That's not
has
precedent.
There ever been anything? Obviously not a serving president, but has there ever been anything close to this? Or regardless of what your job is, are you by the nature in which it's ruled, you have to be treated you have to live in the same quarters or in the same cell. You have to be treated in exactly the same way as all other inmates. Or could concessions be made?
Normally concessions wouldn't be made like that, but it's not unprecedented. Actually, when Manuel Noriega was imprisoned a number of years ago, they had a special wing and a cell for him that was separated from everybody else. So it's conceivable. Again, I don't know if this is in consideration, but it's conceivable that they could find a facility and there's be a separate wing where he could be housed separate from other inmates, where the Secret Service could be there. I mean, again, that's the other part of it. The Secret Service their job is to protect him. Quite frankly, their job is to protect him, whether he's the president or a former president. And so that's going to be a challenge, whether or not he gets elected, is how do they handle the Secret Service's role, all of this. So it's possible they could create a separate wing for him. It's certainly not going to be anybody's preferred solution, but it'll keep him safe. It could allow him to continue to work as president. They would obviously have to make a number of exceptions. I mean, most inmates only get 300 minutes of phone calls a month. I'm sure
visitor time as well.
He's making many more calls than that.
I think all of us are desperate to know whether he'd have to wear the orange jumpsuit or not.
That's a good question. I would assume he would be wearing a uniform, the same inmate uniform that everybody else wears. But again, they certainly could make exceptions for him if they wanted to. But it would be difficult to do that and keep him in in a general population type setting. They're going to have to somehow isolate him from other inmates, and that's going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah,
To
security
be honest,
issues.
what Bureau of Prisons is probably hoping for, and the Secret Service is probably hoping for, is for him to not end up being incarcerated, even if he's convicted, to end up in some sort of home confinement situation. And that would make things a lot easier for both, obviously, the Bureau of Prisons and for the Secret Service.
Yeah, sure,
But
because that is a wild thought, and we've been indulging in the wild thought with you, Hugh, but it appears to have many different pitfalls, many different things. I mean, I'm just imagining Donald Trump, zooming to Xi Jinping from his prison cell, dressed in his in his penal uniform. Anyway, it's a mad thought, but we thought we'd run it through with you. Hugh Hurwitz, thank you, former official at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Really good to have you with us. Thank you. It is Kait Borsay. It's the evening edition. You've been WhatsApping Jane.